fire of Rome still burns, not only in the torches of the Senate halls, but in the hearts of men who dare to stand against betrayal. Kael, the once forgotten gladiator, now stands wounded but unbroken. His body is scarred, his blood nearly spent, but his will burns brighter than ever. After saving the Emperor from a treacherous night of blades and shadows, Kael lies between life and death. Yet in this fragile moment, the wheels of fate turn again. In this chapter, bonds of trust are tested, promises of vengeance are sworn, and the bloody shadow of betrayal finally meets its end. The Emperor, once silent and cautious, now unleashes his fury against the Senate's traitor. Kael, watched over by both healer and princess, feels the weight of destiny closing in. And far away, across the seas in Greece, the betrayer believes he is safe. But Rome never forgets, and Rome never forgives. Prepare yourself for an episode filled with intimacy, trust, and the thunder of vengeance. This is not just politics. This is not just survival. This is war wrapped in silk and steel. Stay until the very end, for what Kael is about to witness will change everything. Kael lay upon a marble bed, his chest rising and falling with uneven rhythm. The physician of the Emperor, a man whose hands had stitched 100 generals back from the brink, bent over him with unwavering focus. Silver instruments gleamed in the candlelight. Every cut of Kael's flesh told the story of the night before, the chaos in the palace, the betrayal of the Senate, the clash of swords under Rome's storm. The physician muttered incantations of medicine, whispering mixtures of herbs and oil into Kael's wounds. For hours, Kael's breath hovered between this world and the shadows. At last, color returned to his cheeks. His hand twitched, fingers curling as though grasping for a sword even in dreams. The physician smiled faintly. The heavy wooden door opened, and with it a new presence entered. She was radiant in her gentleness, cloaked not in jewels, but in grace, the daughter of the Emperor. Her eyes lingered on Kael, and for a brief moment she did not see a gladiator or a soldier. She saw a man who had risked everything for her father. She stepped closer, her voice soft, barely above a whisper. Rome owes you more than words, but I thank you with all my heart. Kael's lips parted, though his voice was faint. I did what had to be done.
The princess remained by Kael's side longer than expected. She asked about his scars, not the ones visible on his body, but the ones etched deeper within. Kael, though weak, spoke of battles in the sands of the Colosseum, of the chains of slavery, and of the silent prayers he once whispered to gods who never answered. Yet, when he spoke of his daughter, his lost love, his voice cracked. The princess's eyes softened. You carry Rome in your pain, she said, and yet you protect it still. My father sees you as a warrior. I see you as something more. Before Kael could answer, the door creaked open once more. This time, the shadow that filled the room was not hers, but the Emperor's. His presence commanded silence. The princess placed her hand upon Kael's wrist gently, whispered a quiet farewell, and slipped past her father, leaving the room heavy with unspoken words. The Emperor studied Kael, his gaze piercing but not unkind. "He gave me more than loyalty," he said. "You gave me my life, and I give you my word. The man who betrayed us, the senator who stained my halls with treachery, will die by my will. Rome does not forgive betrayal."
The Emperor strode from Kael's chamber with steps like thunder. Rage burned in his chest, but it was not the rage of panic. It was the fire of a man wronged, a ruler who had been betrayed within his own walls. He walked into the great audience hall, where shadows of columns stretched like spears across the marble. The Praetorian Guard assembled before him. They were Rome's iron fists, tall, armored, their faces hardened by war. Their shields gleamed beneath torchlight. Their spears stood upright, as if the palace itself had sprouted thorns. At his signal, silence fell so deep that even the torches seemed to flicker less brightly. "You kneel before me as guardians of Rome," the Emperor's voice rang, heavy and commanding. "But tonight, you kneel as hunters of vengeance. The viper who once sat in my council has sunk his fangs deep into Rome. He dared to betray not only his emperor, but the heart of the empire itself. He thinks the sea will shelter him, that Greece will swallow his crimes. He is wrong." He raised a hand. A servant stepped forward carrying a crimson banner embroidered with a golden wolf's head, the sign of a mission not of war, but of retribution. "You will not return with excuses," he thundered. "You will return with his head. You will bring his treachery back to these halls, severed from his shoulders, so that Rome may look upon his face one last time before it rots. This is not a command. This is Rome's law." The guards pounded their fists to their chests in unison, the sound echoing like 100 war drums. Their eyes burned with loyalty, but also with the anticipation of blood. From his chamber, Kael heard faint echoes of the vow. He closed his eyes. The burden of vengeance was no longer his alone. Rome itself had taken up the blade. For the first time in years, he felt the weight lift, not gone, but shared.
The Praetorians wasted no time. Before the moon climbed high, they were already on the docks of Ostia. Black sails unfurled, creaking ropes and snapping canvas filled the harbor. Soldiers in polished armor marched aboard ships like shadows of war. Citizens gathered in silence, some crossing themselves, others whispering prayers. Everyone knew this was no ordinary campaign. The voyage was harsh. The Adriatic Sea churned with storms, waves rising like beasts to swallow their ships. Rain lashed steel helmets. Lightning carved the sky into jagged fire. Yet the guards pressed forward,
gripping ropes, chanting oaths to steady their resolve. They were Rome's hunters, and no storm could turn them aside. Days bled into nights. On the horizon, Greece finally rose like a jewel in the mist, white temples perched on cliffs, olive groves swaying in the wind. But this beauty did not deceive them. Beneath its marble, Greece was a web of whispers and shadows, and the traitor hid somewhere within. The Praetorians split into squads. Some searched taverns, bribing drunkards with coins and threats. Others prowled temples, questioning priests under the cover of piety. At every corner, rumors spilled. A Roman noble seen in a villa near Athens, guarded yet fearful, drinking wine as though drowning guilt. By the second week, certainty hardened. Their prey had chosen a villa overlooking the sea, believing distance and foreign soil would save him. But Rome had stretched its hand across the world before, and it would do so again. At dusk, the Praetorians gathered on a hilltop. Torches burned low as their leader raised a blade. He dies tonight. For Rome, for the Emperor. They descended like wolves under a blood-red sunset.
Brutal, sharp, filled with violence and finality. The villa slept in drunken silence. Servants lay sprawled, too intoxicated to notice shadows creeping over the walls. Olive trees rustled under moonlight as the Praetorians slid between them like phantoms. With a signal, the assault began. Blades cut through guards before they could cry out. Steel clashed, torches crashed to the ground, flames licked at marble steps. The traitor himself burst from the inner chamber, robes hastily tied, a sword gleaming in his hand. His face twisted with fury and fear, sweat dripping down his temples. "Do you think I will kneel like a dog?" he spat. He fought savagely. Desperation gave him the strength of 10 men. His blade cut deep into one guard's throat. Another fell with his stomach pierced. For a moment, it seemed the betrayer might escape. His eyes darted toward the sea beyond the courtyard. But the third Praetorian moved with patience. He circled, shield raised, waiting. When the traitor lunged, the guard slipped aside, and with one devastating strike, he swung his gladius. The betrayer's scream froze mid-breath as his head separated from his shoulders. Blood sprayed across the marble, darkening the white stone with Rome's justice. The body fell like a broken idol, limbs twitching before stillness claimed them. The Praetorian wiped his blade, breathing hard. He stooped, lifted the severed head by its hair, and placed it inside a black iron chest. His voice was low, but filled with solemnity. Rome remembers. Rome avenges. The villa burned as they departed, flames consuming the traitor's last refuge.
The sea was calmer on their return. It was as if the gods themselves had granted smooth passage after the offering of blood. The iron chest sat in the center of the ship, draped with black cloth, guarded by 2 men who did not leave their post even to sleep. None dared open it. The smell of iron and salt clung to the air. When Rome's coast appeared, horns blared from the harbor. Crowds gathered, whispering about what the soldiers carried. Some feared plague, others knew the truth.
By the time the praetorians marched through the capital streets, word had spread. Vengeance had returned. In the emperor's hall, torches blazed brighter than ever. Senators and nobles stood along the walls, unease flickering in their eyes. They had conspired with ambition before. Now they saw its price. Kael, still weak, leaned on a cane as he entered. He looked like death wrapped in flesh, yet his spirit remained. When the chest was dragged forward and opened, the severed head rolled into the light. Its lifeless eyes stared upward, mouth frozen in the arrogance of his final breath. The hall erupted in gasps. Some turned away, others crossed themselves. The emperor stepped forward, towering above the trophy. His voice was low, yet carried to every corner. Behold Rome's justice. Betrayal is not washed away by excuses, but by blood. Kael stared long at the head. He expected triumph, but felt only silence. The man who had chained him, who had tried to destroy him, was nothing more than a broken husk. Vengeance did not heal scars. It only ended stories.
The emperor raised his hand, and silence fell. Rome is cleansed of betrayal, he declared. Let this head remind every man, woman, and child what fate awaits those who dare stand against the empire. Rome forgets nothing. Nobles bowed. Guards saluted. The air was thick with fear and obedience. But Kael felt no relief. He had lived for this moment, the death of the traitor. Yet as he looked upon the severed head, the hollowness inside him deepened. The emperor turned to him. You have suffered at his hands. Does this satisfy you? Kael's throat was dry. It ends what began, but satisfaction. He shook his head. No. Blood does not give back what was taken. It only feeds the soil for more blood. The emperor studied him with heavy eyes. Then perhaps you are wiser than I. Rome will always drink from the cup of vengeance. It is the only wine it knows. Kael turned away, gripping the cane until his knuckles whitened. He knew his war was far from over. His scars pulsed, his soul restless. He wondered if vengeance was truly a path or a pit from which no man could climb. But one thing was certain: his journey was not finished.
Do not leave Kael's journey unfinished. The blood, the betrayal, the vengeance. This is only the beginning. Subscribe now and march with us into the heart of Rome's darkest secrets.